All right, it's my privilege to welcome up Peter McCormick and Ray Youssef to talk to us a little bit about the Bitcoin revolution in the developing world. I think it's important to note before they start that the platform and the business that Ray and his team have built is being used right now by millions of people in dozens and dozens of countries. His platform has millions of users in countries like Nigeria, and people are starting to just basically use this as a parallel financial system. So we're delighted to have Peter talking with Ray here. In a few minutes, we're going to have some of Ray's teammates come up and talk about some of the other things Paxful is doing, like connecting to the Lightning Network, which at the Human Rights Foundation we're a big fan of. And you know, we'll enjoy the show. Thank you so much, Peter and Ray.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Peter.
How are you?
I'm quite all right, my good man.
So a couple of weeks ago, I was in New York at a conference called SALT, and it was full of Wall Street people talking about almost exactly the same subject, which is Bitcoin. Here we are at a human rights event talking about Bitcoin. One of the things I've noticed, I've been lucky enough to travel the world quite a bit with this job, as you have. Your understanding of Bitcoin changes the more countries you visit, especially the more you visit in the developing world. So can you just explain to everyone the experience you have traveling the world, the places you've been, and how that's changed your understanding of Bitcoin?
So this journey started in New York when I met my co-founder, who was sitting right over there. And we bonded over the belief that Bitcoin could help the little guy, those people in need, usually not in the West. But I only became aware of the power of Bitcoin to help real people when I went to the emerging world, when I went to Nigeria in specific. And I spoke to the people and I began to understand the true depth of their problems. And I'll give you some examples, because that's how we understand things. Africa has over 2,000 payment networks, and only 3% of them talk to each other. It's easier to load up a suitcase full of cash and take it to the country next door than it is to use the banking system. If you're an M-Pesa user in Kenya, you can't send money to an M-Pesa user in Ghana. If you're Nigerian with lots of money in the bank and you have a debit card, you can only spend $100 a month on that debit card. People ask me often, why is Africa so backward? And, you know, in the West, we only get an image of Africa that is poverty, disease, and corruption. So I explain it like this. How advanced would the United States be if you couldn't send money from New York to New Jersey? And that's the case in the emerging world, specifically Africa. When you look at it through those lenses, it's a miracle they're not extinct. So staying connected to the streets is number one. Meeting real people. This is what it's all about, guys. Peer-to-peer electronic cash, P2P, that means human to human. That's what this is all about. And that's the only way we'll understand who we're actually helping.
So I've experienced very similar things, traveling around and seeing the difficulty people have with closed monetary systems. But with Bitcoin, we now have an open monetary system. So how can people help people in the developing world actually adopt Bitcoin? What are the steps and what are the challenges we face to expand the knowledge and understanding? Is it infrastructure? Is it technology? Is it education? Is it all of those?
It's everything, but it starts with education. So we just opened up the first Bitcoin center in Africa, and I'm very proud of that, in Abuja, Nigeria. It's something we should have done years ago. And it's beautiful, again, when you go there, where we were in Abuja at the Transcorp Hilton, and I was wearing my Built with Bitcoin cap, and we were sitting down having food, and then this young lady runs out, and she had her apron on and her hat. She was working in the kitchen, and she introduces herself. Her name is Rachel, and she said, "Teach me about Bitcoin." And I was like, okay. Well, I said, hey, I'll send you some Bitcoin right now, but her phone was broken. She writes her number down on a crumpled up piece of paper and gives it to me. And that is the beauty of the African people. Despite her situation, she wanted to learn. And now there's a place for people like her to learn. And that is incredibly important. So education is huge, but product is also huge, guys. Let's not forget, all the technology in the world doesn't matter unless we build products that are connected to real people. And this is where I shoot out the flare to all the geniuses and super geniuses in this amazing space. Let's build products for real people. Let us lead with empathy. This is the key. We are building products for real human beings, not for other computers to use.
So can you talk about some of the examples in Nigeria? I know you've spent a lot of time. We've talked about it because I want to go. I've never had a chance to visit. But can you talk about, give us maybe a couple of examples of how people have adopted Bitcoin and the changes that's made to either their working conditions or if it's something specifically towards activism. Can you give us any examples?
I have many examples, Peter.
Okay.
And I'm excited to share them with you guys. So I'm the CEO of Paxful, but I do customer support every single day. I love it when people will come onto our site and they'll open up that little support live chat and they'll ask me, hey, what is Bitcoin? And I'm like, okay, I want to know first what brought them here. What caused them to type Bitcoin into Google and end up on our website, right? I find that invaluable. So 2017, something really interesting happened. The Nigerian central bank shut down outgoing wires out of the country. And I suppose they wanted to hold on to the dollars and euros for themselves, whether they're buying military equipment, medical supplies, whatever it might be. The problem was that the people couldn't send money out of the country anymore. So I'm talking to these folks, and this one guy's like, you know, I want to buy some Bitcoin, but I don't know what it's really useful for. And I tell them, why are you here? Do you have a problem that I can help you solve? That should always be the question on your mind, right? And he said, yeah, I buy cars. And I buy cars in America, and I sell them in Nigeria for quite a bit of profit, actually. But I can't buy those cars anymore because I can't get a wire out to the auction house in Detroit. So his business was done. He couldn't continue his business. So I told him, okay, how much is the car? $5,000. It's a used Land Rover Defender, 87 or something, I forget. And I told him, hey, just get $5,000 of Bitcoin. You can buy with a bank transfer in Nigeria, peer-to-peer. And once you get that Bitcoin, you can sell that Bitcoin to someone in New York City. And they'll happily pay you for the Bitcoin, which is held in escrow, by sending a local money wire, ACH. It'll clear the same day or the next day, and the bill will be paid. He didn't believe it at first. He thought it was a scam, but he was quite desperate. I walked him through the initial transaction, and it worked. And once it worked for him, he got all his other friends into it as well. And that's how things start. But it starts again with the empathy to care about people's situations and the inquisitiveness to inquire about their problems. That's just one example. I have many more if you'd like to hear them.
Well, do you have any more? Because this is the Human Rights Foundation Freedom Forum. Do you have any more on maybe the activism side? Can we talk about what happened maybe with the NSARS protests? How Bitcoiners around the world were able to support activists?
I don't have any really specific examples for that. A lot of my friends were involved in NSARS and they were using Bitcoin profusely. They encountered a lot of problems with their government. They got their bank account shut down. They got shaken down for their Bitcoin, but they managed to protect themselves. I don't have any insight there, guys. I'm sorry. I have stories about real use cases, such as remittance example. I can share that.
We should talk about remittance because it's a big topic at the moment. One of our favorite stories to talk about at the moment is El Salvador, also a third world country. The president has placed ATMs both in the US and El Salvador, and he's essentially implemented free remittance. Let's talk about how important remittance is in the developing world and how Bitcoin can end up putting more money in the pockets of the people on the receiving end.
It's a great question. So here's a very unique example. So in January 2020, remittances into Nigeria were $2.5 billion a month. By September 2020, that number had fallen to $55 million a month. That's a 98.7% decrease in remittances coming in. Can you imagine? That is why the CBN said, hey, we got to shut this down. What is going on to all this foreign money, which they consider hard money coming into our economy? And it's because the Nigerian youth, with their immense business acumen and drive, figured out, hey, I can use Bitcoin to send money back home. And not only is it free, but I can actually make a profit. I'll give you an example. I was in Berlin, and a friend of mine, she's Kenyan. She wanted to send money back home. To send 1,000 euros back home to her sister in Nairobi, she'll pay 200 euros. And she'll have to wait until the next day, and her sister will have to go wait in a long line. So I asked her, does your sister have M-Pesa? She said, yes. I said, give me her number. So I took 100 euros worth of Bitcoin, and I sold it to a guy in Mombasa, and he sent $104 worth, 104 euros worth of Kenyan shillings to her sister immediately via M-Pesa. Her sister texted her right away, and she said, where did this money come from? And that's the power of Bitcoin. That's the power of peer-to-peer. So my friend in Berlin, she's not only now just using Bitcoin to send money, she's actually started a little business off of that to capitalize on the arbitrage, because Bitcoin is more scarce in those places. So a lot of what got me to Bitcoin in the beginning was the promise of remittances being faster, cheaper, and easier. I couldn't imagine they actually be profitable to do so, but that's the power of arbitrage and peer-to-peer.
All right, I think we've got two different audiences in here today. So we've got a bunch of our friends, Bitcoiners, who we all know and we see at all the different events. And also we have a bunch of people who may be learning about Bitcoin for the first time, or they've heard of Bitcoin but learning how it can be used. I'm going to do a question for each. So in terms of the people who are here new to Bitcoin, what would you say some of the myths are regarding this? Because there may be activists here or people who are working on philanthropy projects. Like, what are the myths that get spread around, the most important ones that we need to debunk?
Number one, by a country mile, you can buy any fraction of a Bitcoin. You can buy $1 of Bitcoin. It doesn't matter what the price is. If you've got one Bitcoin, that is equal to 100 million Satoshis. You're going to start seeing more of sats in the future. So that's number one, guys. Wherever you go, always be sure to repeat that, because you'd be surprised how many people do not know that. There are many more myths as well, but I think I'll beat that one into your heads. Maybe I'll repeat it 5 more times, or you just keep a mental note of that. That is so important, really, because that is actually the biggest stopper. We love seeing that price go up, but in the minds of normal people, it is quite frightening, right? So we should always lead with that. We can never repeat that enough. This is a game of education, and education is all about repetition and speaking with empathy. You must lead with that.
All right, then in terms of all of our friends here that we see every time we go to an event, what are the things that we could be doing as Bitcoiners that can help support communities in the developing world? I know someone like Alex, obviously this is all of the majority of his focus, and he's great, but some of us will spend time at other events around the world, talking about hedging inflation in the US, which is really a luxury investment. What are the things that we can be doing to help support people in the developing world?
It's a good question, guys. So if you are not running a platform, well, if you are running a platform, we can have a deep conversation about that. But if you're a normal person, it's all about, again, education. You know, you meet people and they're asking you about Bitcoin. Tell them about Bitcoin. I tip every Uber driver I have with Bitcoin, really. If they're interested, and I always ask the question, I love giving Bitcoin tips out. And when you walk someone through the process of actually downloading a Bitcoin wallet and sit there over their shoulder, it's actually an invaluable experience. You do that enough times, you're going to want to build a Bitcoin wallet yourself, believe me. So if there are any builders in here, please do come see me. I do love product with a passion. As far as donations, if you want to donate, there's plenty of amazing organizations. There's HRF, there's Built with Bitcoin, which I brandish right here. Our mission is to build 100 schools across Africa and the emerging world. We are currently on school number 6, soon to be 7. I'm very proud of that initiative, not just because it's helping people, real people. First 2 schools had 400 children in Rwanda, Kenya, and Nigeria, the other 2 countries, but because it helps brand an image of Bitcoin as something that is generative, something that is pro-human, something that changes people's lives and touches real people. It is built with Bitcoin. I imagine seeing that label just as much as we see made in China in the near future. So wish me luck.
Are there any specific infrastructure challenges? These guys are coming up as well. Are there any specific infrastructure challenges in the developing world that need to be solved? So someone like my friend Matt Odell there would rag on at me to make sure I have a deep cold storage multi-sig wallet. But that's all well and good if you can distribute keys into a bank safety deposit box and a relative that lives in another country. But I would imagine the infrastructure for things like that and security are quite different in someone like Nigeria. How's that being approached?
Again, education. So one of the biggest problems in the world especially in Africa when it comes to Bitcoin, is that I'd say the vast majority of African websites have been hacked, and every email and password has been leaked, and they were all stored in plain text, which means that if you're an African, and there's probably a 95% chance that some hacker out there can hack your email address. And that's what we're seeing. Most people use the same password for their email that they will use for their Paxful account or any other online wallet that they will use. And if they're not using 2FA, they will be hacked. This is the very sad reality. It's a huge challenge just to get people to use two-factor authentication. And this is a little boring, it's very basic, but this is actually the majority of the challenge when it comes to security. And if you want to talk about people using their own hardware wallets and keeping their own private keys, it's pretty scary to keep your life savings on your computer as is, right? So there's quite a bit of work to do there, guys, but let's be patient. That's key.